Hello and welcome to the Robbies Podcast, your destination for in-depth discussion and analysis of the Premier League. I'm Robbie Earle. He's not Robbie Musto. I've got actually some sense on the show today. I'm joined by our very own Danny Higginbotham, and here are today's topics. Michael Carrick storms out of the gate as the interim manager at Manchester United and brushes aside Pep Guardiola and Manchester City with a 2-0 win. It's a valuable point gain, but frustrations remain as Arsenal play out their second 0-0 result in consecutive matches. The screws continue to tighten on Thomas Frank as Spurs, after a poor loss, were booed off against West Ham United. And good times at Crystal Palace appear to be coming to an end as Oliver Glasner shares some choice words following their 2-1 defeat away to Sunderland. That's what we've got coming up in today's episode. So first of all, Dan, great to have you on. As I say in the headlines, great to have a bit of sense. Musty, geez, week on week, it's too much for anybody.
I don't know how you deal with it.
Oh, tell me, mate, tell me. It's cool. I think they call it community work over here, spending that long with him. Let's get to the team. There's a shirt behind you of the great Manchester United, obviously a team you started at as well. I mean, that was the storyline, really. Michael Carrick in his first game in charge in his second stint at Manchester United. Dan, first of all, talk to me about the change, the influence of Carrick, what you saw different from Ruben Amorim, and then we'll get into maybe some of the bigger picture things.
Yeah, I think when Amorim was there wasn't a shortage of goals. You know, they're one of the highest scorers in the Premier League. There's only the top two that had scored more than them. But the problem was conceding goals. When they lost the ball, they were so open. And I think when you look at Michael Carrick, you speak to people that have been associated with Middlesbrough, you speak to, I've got quite a few friends, funnily enough, over here that Middlesbrough supporters. Yeah. And they said he was so close to getting it right. But he's got an identity. The one thing I would say is that was one of the best Manchester United performances that I'd seen in a long time. And I think, agree, and I think listening to you and Tim yesterday, at half-time, but then at full-time, it was like, oh yeah, this is Manchester United. And it was a really, really top-class performance. I think the way in which they were able to go forward quickly in numbers, the pace that they used. Yeah. I think Manchester United are at their best as a counter-attacking team. So you look at the two recent wins that they've had, Manchester City and Newcastle. Yeah. They had 34% possession in both of those games. And is that okay, Dan? If you're Manchester United, who we've seen probably have more possession, that more attacking flair, is it okay to be counter-attack style? Maybe a bit more Mourinho than Pep, let's say? It's okay to be if you're getting the results like that. But the problem is there's not many teams in the Premier League that will say, we'll dominate the ball over you. I think that's the issue that you can have. So you can say, yes, Liverpool, where they went to Anfield, got a great result. Yeah. Arsenal will always dominate the ball more than them. Manchester City, obviously Newcastle showed that, although United didn't have their strongest team. So I think when it becomes difficult, it's probably 95% of the time they're going to have to dominate the ball themselves and ask the questions. And I think from Carrick's side of things, I think he looked at it yesterday and said, right, if we can be compact in a 4-5-1, that means there's going to be less gaps between the midfield, the defence and the attack, and then we can break quickly with the pace that we've got. So from that perspective, it was an unbelievable setup. But now, okay, play Arsenal next weekend. They'll be able to do it then. Yeah. But when you're playing against teams sort of in that lower half of the Premier League, it's going to be very difficult to do that unless you get an early goal. It was a day, Dan, for me, that I was kind of pleased. It wasn't X's and O's, it wasn't system, and it wasn't... Of course, the system and the tactics are important, but, we've been so blinded, I think, with Ruben Amorim. What I saw, mate, was players playing with freedom, with aggression, committed, front foot. I thought the football in the attacking third was excellent. I see Bruno in areas where he wants to be and can influence the game more, so supplying rather than scrapping around. I just wonder, mate, and you've worked under different coaches as I have. Sometimes if you get too bogged into tactics, kind of the game gets played in your head and you're not as energetic. You lose a little bit of that freedom and that way to go about your game. Seeing the contrast between a Carrick, and it's only one game, Manchester United and Amorim first United team, it just it feels so very different. Is there a sense that maybe too much was going on with the tactical side and thinking where I should be and thinking what I should do? Yeah, I think there can be too much on that. I think if you and me were to sit down and have a conversation, and I said to you, Robbie, name your best 3 performances.
Yeah.
And you give me the best 3 performances that you had throughout your career. I guarantee you, if I said to you, how were you thinking during that game?
Yeah.
You will probably turn around to me and go, I was on cruise control.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking.
Things happen, don't they?
Exactly. And I think that's, so if you look at Manchester United's first goal yesterday, the one that Mbumo scores.
Yeah.
You can take that in any recent generation of Manchester United, and people say that is a Manchester United goal.
Yeah.
Now, people talk about the DNA of a football club. I don't get too much into the DNA because a lot of people that provide that DNA are no longer at the club, whether they're coaches, players, whatever it may be. They don't exist as much now at the football club. But I think what there was yesterday was Michael Carrick saying, listen, our biggest issue is defending. We know that we've got pace in this team, so let's defend in numbers. And then we know that we can catch Manchester City out in the counter-attack. So sort of if you look at the game yesterday, and you're absolutely spot on what you're saying about the X's and the O's. Yesterday, simplicity was genius for Manchester United.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And I think if you'd have asked Michael Carrick before the game, what would be the perfect performance? It would have been that. And let's be honest, I think 2-0 actually flattered Manchester City.
Yeah, you're right.
It could have been 4 or 5.
I mean,
so
it
was
or 3 goals disallowed and hit the woodwork a couple of times.
So where do you? So if you're looking at Manchester City, obviously Haaland was really quiet.
Yeah.
Do you think Manchester City suffers at times because this team is built around Haaland?
It's a good question. I'm not so sure. I sometimes think this team plays some of its football excluding Haaland because that's the way they are, and they bring him in the attacking third. He does what he does. He's still got 20 Premier League goals, an incredible number for this start of the season. I think Manchester City, are a more careless City than we've seen in the past. I think they turn the ball over a little bit more. They're susceptible to counter-attacks more. Defensively, obviously, Elaine and Kuzanov were 2 young centre-backs who I thought struggled through the game. Elaine came off at half-time. They got Ake essentially, which wasn't a great upgrade, I didn't think. And so I think this City team have got to understand the mould of what a Pep team is, like that great possession, but also as soon as the ball gets turned over, they go to work again. They stop opposition. That's one part of Pep's teams that doesn't get talked about enough, how good they were without the ball.
And it's interesting that you say that because I think that's Liverpool's problem at the moment as well. Because we look at it like, and for so many years it was like, wow, Guardiola's playing this football and Klopp's playing this football. They're committing so many men forward.
Yeah. And
how are they able to stop the counter-attack? Well, the whole reason is because they both commit a lot of plays forward, so they're able to immediately go and press. But as you quite rightly said, I think Manchester City, when they lose the ball, if they're not in that position straight away to press, that is when they're so vulnerable.
Don't they?
Yeah. And United's first goal was a prime example. I think, was it a free kick for Manchester City and then one header from Maguire, and all of a sudden it's like the red arrow was flying forward.
We could talk on this all night. We've got to move on because obviously we've got to get to a few other games. Before we do, mate, and I've got to get you to kind of the question where Lady Lowe's put me and Tim, and I was listening to radios and that last night. Michael Carrick was brought in as an interim head coach for 17 games in the Premier League with the view to, I'm assuming, somebody else coming in the summer. If things continued in this vein, I mean, you know where I'm going, so they beat Arsenal, they win the next 12 games, draw 2 and lose 2, if that's the right numbers. Should Manchester United be thinking of Michael Carrick as their permanent manager?
I'm seeing your face yesterday when Bex asked you the question, and your face sort of sums up how I'm feeling, which is like, if he does unbelievably well, you're thinking, oh yeah, you know what, he should be giving it. But I think what I'm trying to do, start sort of stepping away and saying, right, before Michael Carrick did anything at Manchester United in terms of the managerial side, my biggest thing was, okay, it's important what happens on the field, but the most important thing is what happens off the field. Yeah. As in terms of, okay, what's going on with director of football? Who is the next coach that you're bringing in? So as much as you would love to see a Manchester United legend going into the football club like he's doing, having great success, and then maybe the powers that be turning around in the summer and saying, here's the job for you. I think I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go against the grain a little bit and say, no, I don't think so. Now, that could completely change. Like you say, if he has an unbelievable run, but for me, Michael Carrick is in sort of a no-lose position because he's putting himself in the spotlight now going forward. You can see methodical. He's very much as a coach as he was as a player, which doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low. Yeah. Yes.
It's a good shout.
I think if it's a Tuchel or if it's a Pochettino, get the work being done behind the scenes, whoever it may be, and hope that Michael Carrick does incredibly well. Great then for English managers, and then he can, either be part of the new process or maybe move on himself. But I'm going to try and not look through the magical side of things, which we tend to do.
Those tinted glasses and the Man United DNA. And I'm with you. And I like Michael Carrick a lot as a player. I like him as a man, the bit I know about him, and I think he's a really smart coach. I still go back to Dan. If he wins all 17 games and he wins all 17 games 4-0, the right long-term decision for this football club is not Michael Carrick now. Michael Carrick's going to be as good a coach as we believe. He'll go off somewhere else. He'll learn his trade, as others have done, as the Klopps did, as Sir Alex did, as Pep did. And when he comes back to this football club, he'll be in a better shape to take it where he and the club want to be. And so I just hope that, people can be strong with those opinions, have those opinions, and look for the right thing for Manchester United, because there's no doubt, we saw what the potential, even with this group of players, can be. If you start adding some other pieces and get things right behind the scenes, a lot more positive days could be ahead for United. Let's move it to the team who were top of the table. It was Arsenal going to Nottingham Forest. Arsenal coming off a 0-0 against Liverpool last week. A 0-0 draw at Forest, not taken in the same way. Many thought it was maybe a missed opportunity for Arsenal to put a 9-point gap between them and the chasing pack, which was obviously City and Villa. How do you see that one, mate?
I think it was a frustrating game for Arsenal. No question about it. We know with Nottingham Forest, they tend to do better against the teams that want to dominate the ball because they want to play on the counter-attack themselves. And under Sean Dyche, you know that you're going to have a really good defensive setup. One of the things that I found interesting was the choice of centre forward. Now, I don't know what you thought about this, because obviously Gyökeres, he comes for big money. But I think when you're playing against a team that's going to play relatively deep, for me, I'm looking and thinking to myself, that's a Jesus or that's a Marino role where they will drag the two centre backs out and maybe create space in behind. So. Were you surprised that Gyökeres started, or is it a case of, well, they've paid this money, they have to stick with him?
Not surprised, I think, for a couple of reasons. I think every time I see Arteta talk about Gyökeres, he says, let's not just look at the goals, what he's doing in terms of taking defenders away and dragging people, which I think is a little bit of support for a guy who hasn't hit maybe the form that he would like. The goals have been okay without being spectacular. Lack of basic pace, I think, is a bit of a problem to him. Because if you're going to play as he does, high up, as you say, on the back line, you need to have the kind of foot pace that's going to stretch that back forward and take them away. He doesn't have that. There was a great opportunity when he got sort of level with Murillo and they were running to goal. Murillo gets back and gets a challenge in. If that's Haaland, if that's Isak in form, if that's Salah and those kind of forwards, they don't get there. The forward gets his shot away. So I think there's a little bit of self-preservation in, I paid this amount of money for him, I bought him. I mean, what I would say, Dan, is look, Arsenal didn't win the title last season because they drew 14 Premier League games. Far too many. You buy Victor Gyökeres and pay that kind of money to Sporting Lisbon to change 7 or 8 of those draws into wins. Yesterday was one of those days. Now, service wasn't as great as it could be, but I think we're starting to get to the stage where Mikel Arteta might have to look at the other options. A Jesus and a Marino who come short, a Kai Havertz who's getting back to fitness, or he's even played a Trossard in there who's a clever little manipulator of the ball. I just hope, Dan, and I said this on air to Tim and Rebecca, that Mikel Arteta is now strong enough and confident enough to do the right thing for the football club to win the title. Not the right thing that might be protecting somebody. And if it means dropping Gyökeres, own that decision, drop him, and go on and win the title.
Yeah, I find it. What I find really fascinating is that you have Arsenal and you have Manchester City, right? Aston Villa, it's a strange one. You wouldn't expect them to be there, but they are, and give them full credit. But if you look over recent years, it's been, Liverpool, Manchester City, and Arsenal have been challenging. But it's two completely different ways of doing things. So if you look at Manchester City, to all intents and purposes, this team is sort of built to bring the best out in Haaland. Listen, get the ball up to him. Yeah. You're gonna create chances for him, and he will get a huge amount of goals for us. Whereas you look at Arsenal, they don't build their team around a centre forward. They build it as though it's a team where it's okay. We'll have a few guys that will get 6 goals. We'll have some that will get 5
Spread
goals.
Around,
so they
isn't it? Yeah.
So, but it's fascinating to see that there's not necessarily one right way and one wrong way because. City could still win the Premier League, although Arsenal are huge favourites. But I just think Arteta looks at it and goes, as you quite rightly said, I think Guardiola looks at Haaland as a centre-forward. He has to be our goal scorer. I think a lot of the times Arteta looks at the centre-forward and thinks he doesn't necessarily have to be the goal scorer, but he has to do something that's going to affect the play, which will allow others to flourish.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dan. Let's move things forward because next weekend on Sunday 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Peacock, Arsenal host Manchester United. I mean, that was always us growing up and being in football was the big game on it. It was Wenger v Fergie. It was all on the Arsenal team. We've had Pizzagate and all that stuff, the history. It's a huge game. Who would you see favourites where we are now? Arsenal coming off the back of a couple of 0-0 draws, or Manchester United buoyant by the 2-0 win and a week of work with Carrick now on the training ground?
I think Arsenal will be favourites, but I go back to what I've said previously. I think this year they have managed to change it. But if you go back for, I think it's the last 2 seasons, they never followed up a bad result with a good result. And we've seen now they've had two consecutive draws. So Manchester United can go to Arsenal knowing that they can play the way that suits them. I know there's pressure on Manchester United to succeed to get into that top 4, but the onus will not be on Manchester United. The onus will be on Arsenal. So I think if you look at it and think to yourself, right, well, if Manchester United can have that defensive sort of structure, which enables them to keep tight, the midfielders close to the defence, and then the forwards sort of sitting in, and then play on the counter-attack with the pace that they've got. Dorgu has just been sensational. He just looks completely different now playing as a winger. Then you've got Mbeumo, you've got Cunha if he plays, you've got Ahmed, you've got Fernandes. So I think from Carrick's side of things, his preparation for the Arsenal game will be exactly the same as it was for Manchester City. So
I suppose for Carrick as well, Dan, the challenge, part of the challenge, and listen, whether he gets the job or not, who knows? Let's wait and see. But part of the problems with Manchester United, they've shown no consistency, have they? They've never really gone like, okay, we beat City. They'll go and lose to Arsenal, and then we're not sure, and maybe draw the next one. Whereas, I mean, if he goes back to back, Manchester City and Arsenal, arguably the 2 best teams with Liverpool in the league, that would be eye catching. That would be some kind of start.
It would be incredible, but as bizarre as it sounds, they're 2 decent games. Like a lot of people turn around and go, well, no, surely your best 2 games would be Wolves and Burnley. But Wolves and Burnley are teams that can cause problems for United because they sit back. Manchester United are still at their best when they counter-attack. They have the ability to dominate the ball. There's no question about that, but they're wide open. Recent performances have shown that. Everton, West Ham, Bournemouth, Wolves, they leave themselves wide open. Whereas I think what he can say to the players is, let's sit back in a 4-5-1. Be patient. We don't have to get stretched. And then away we go. So I think you'll see more of the same.
I mean, Wolves have done a job on Newcastle today. Burnley did a job on Liverpool yesterday. Everton done a job on Villa, you could say. So, those teams that you think you should beat are not that easy. So, huge game at the Emirates next Sunday, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Okay, mate, we're going to move things on. Again, I'm going to take you to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Maybe a little less about the game, although we'll give some credit to West Ham and Nuno, who went 1-0 up through Somerville. Romero gets a equaliser for Spurs, and then in the last minutes of the game, Callum Wilson, who we're led to believe is on his way out of the club, comes on, has a shot that goes out for a corner, from the resulting corner scores the goal that gives West Ham a 2-1 win against Tottenham. An incredible amount of booing at the end of the game to Thomas Frank. The usual, you're getting sacked in the morning. Apparently there was a meeting at the training ground today with some of the hierarchy and whether Frank was involved in that. But the word seems to be that, they're going to continue with things as they are, but, he's definitely in some hot water. Talk to me about Thomas, because I know you know Thomas well, and you've had a relationship with him over the years, and you speak to him now and then. Is this as simple as this job being too big? Is this the wrong move for Thomas Frank, who's no doubt an astute, smart coach?
Yeah.
But it hasn't worked. In 6 months, Dan, I don't quite know what Thomas Frank's Spurs are going to look like.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to agree with everything that you've just said there. I think when he was first given the job, I'm like, this is perfect. Because with Thomas Frank, I think he wanted to play a specific way at Brentford.
Yeah.
But he couldn't play a specific way because he didn't have the players. So when he was at Brentford, what he would do is, if it was the big 5 or 6 clubs, he would play he had a different style of playing. The rest of the teams, it was like, okay, this is the way that we can play. But that's not going to work at Tottenham.
No.
He is very much, or has been, and quite rightly so, with the club that he managed for so long. He was reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot can be taken from Tottenham's away form. Only Arsenal have got more points away from home
it's incredible,
than Spurs have.
Yeah.
Because away from home, then they don't have to be the antagonist. They don't have to be the team that's sort of proactive. They can be reactive because the onus isn't on them. At home, I think there's only West Ham and Wolves that have got less points than them.
They've won two games at home out of the Premier League this season. Two. In that magnificent stadium full of people, they've seen 2 wins.
Yeah, and it's so bad. But if you were to reverse it and their away form was a home form, and then there wouldn't be as much pressure on, because that's where the majority of your fans are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think he's sort of moving forward, or he's trying to adjust himself. Because you look at Brentford, whether it was in the Championship, even when they got promoted in the first few years in the Premier League, more often than not, it was Brentford, unbelievable story, them making the Premier League, and they was like, okay, we can defend, and then we'll break quickly. You had Ivan Toney, you had Thiago, who's doing unbelievable now. You had Mbumo, you had players that could play on the counter attack. Now, teams aren't going to let Tottenham play on the counter attack unless it's the cream of the crop. They're not going to allow that, and I think one of the issues that he has is that he has to become more proactive than reactive, because we know that the Tottenham fans won't put up with that.
Tell me a bit about the club itself, though, Dan. As I look at it, I see some problems on the pitch. I see some relationship problems that I'm not totally happy with. I've seen Porro, I've seen Van der Ven, I've seen others. With the manager, I've seen a bit of discord between the fans and some of the players. There seems a lot going on, a lot that's not right, and doesn't all fall on Thomas Frank's lap. And certainly the football club needs to look at itself and how it's done its business. But there seems a few things that he's got to address, like sticky plaster. What's the most important? And why I say that, Dan, is because I'm just going to make the comparison to Crescencio Somerville scores the goal for West Ham, ran all the way over to the touchline and gave Nuno a hug. Now, I'm not saying I love a hug. I love a manager who hugs me. I'm a hugger. I'm not sure if a Tottenham player scores, they go over and hug Thomas Frank. Now, that's okay, because different relationships, different people. I'm not sure Sir Alex Ferguson was a huge hugger of players. But just that sort of visual side, that the club's on side, that the players are behind the manager, I see at West Ham, and fair play to Nuno, he's trying to get things right. I'm not sure I see the same thing at Tottenham.
I think this can go back years and years, Robbie, because it was something, because I heard that comment that you made, and I found it interesting, because there are things that you always look at and think, okay, they can show signs of things. Yeah. You go back to your playing career, right? And I go back to my playing career. Have you ever known what Tottenham are? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. What are Tottenham?
A good footballing team with excellent individuals, often top class individuals, but never necessarily going to go on to win an awful lot. That's how my version of Tottenham would look. And
okay, they won the Europa League last season, but that was their first competition that they'd won in a long time. So I think what happens is, when you've got Arsenal, when you've got Chelsea that have had the success that they've had over the years, Arsenal, obviously, the huge rivalry that they have with Tottenham, that doesn't sit well with Tottenham fans. So I think from Tottenham's side of things, you look at this beautiful new stadium, they've spent a lot of money, but there's so much chopping and changing on a consistent basis that it's like the fans get frustrated with that. The fans get frustrated with the decisions that are being made. And so that's why I said to you, is like, what do Tottenham want to be? But as each manager comes in, as each set of players come in, everyone's trying to distinguish what they're trying to be. And I really want Thomas Frank to succeed. It's not looking good at the moment. No. It really isn't.
Well, they got Dortmund, haven't they? Champions League, and then they're away at Burnley, which could be. Could be. I mean, if they don't win at Burnley, or certainly if they lose at Burnley, I would think that would be almost the end for Thomas Frank.
Yeah, I think it would be very, very difficult to disagree. Obviously, there's people behind the scenes that he's known for a long time. Yeah. Not just being brought to the club by these people, but people that he's had relationships with before. I really want him to turn it around.
Yeah, me too. And they allowed him to get Heitingham in, didn't they, as his assistant, which you kind of think, well, why would you do that if you were thinking to get rid of the guy? So and
also Gallagher as well.
Gallagher's signing,
Yeah. So you would hope maybe that gives him a little bit more. But you can see the supporters. You can't...
If that booing continues and that supporter start, then it might move things on. Let's move on, mate, because we're a little short time this week. Sunderland 2, Crystal Palace 1. Sunderland continue to do incredible things. I think along with Arsenal, the only unbeaten home team in the Premier League. Again, this was more about what was said as much as how the game was played. Pino gets Crystal Palace ahead. Lafay gets an equaliser, and then Robbie comes up with another big moment for Sunderland. Great scenes again, good win for Sunderland. And then we got the fallout of Oliver Glasner, mate, who came out really all guns blazing and talked about being abandoned by the hierarchy at the football club. Talked about his heart's been ripped out again after it was ripped out when Eze was sold, basically what he was saying without him knowing. Gay, he said, was allowed to move on the Friday ahead of the game, so he didn't play. He didn't know anything about it. I mean, he's called the club out. He's put a division, I think, between the club and the dressing room. He also, Dan, and something I found really difficult to accept, didn't make a substitution in the game. And I know they had a few kids on. They had Uche on the bench, almost to make his point. Almost like... The points, okay, we've lost the points, but I'm going to make a point here. That, to me, was actually reflects to me really badly on Oliver Glasner, a guy I enjoy seeing his football. It's been incredible what he's done for Crystal Palace. I think it's a bad look and a trait for him that might hurt him going down the track, because if you're Man United, if you're one of these so-called bigger clubs, and maybe these German clubs and Spanish clubs looking at him, is that the way you want your guy to behave when things aren't going well?
I think what you have to do as well, Robbie, here is that everybody knows the way that Crystal Palace work.
Yeah.
It's the way they work. And because the amount of times that people say to you, wow, I tell you what, Crystal Palace, they don't have signed some good young players.
Yeah.
Why are they not going to City? Why are they not going to Arsenal? Why are they not going to Chelsea, Liverpool, Manchester United? There's a reasoning behind it. Palace have done it. They did it with Elise. They did it with Eze. They did it with Gahey, where they probably had other options. But what they turn around to the player is, listen, you're going to come to this club. We're going to look after you financially. Yeah. You're going to make the team better. We're going to make you better. And then we're going to sell you on. And then you'll go and play in the Champions League. And that's the philosophy of the football club. Yeah. That's how it works. So from Glasner's side of things, I think he's been unbelievable for Crystal Palace. He'll go down as one of the greatest managers.
Absolutely.
But him coming out and saying what he's said now, that's what's happened. You know as well as me, that's what's happened at Crystal Palace for years. That's why they get good young players, because there's the promise that we're going to sell you on.
Yeah. I thought Tim made a really good point that you could probably look at Brighton as being the example of a not too dissimilar thing, where at times they've changed managers. They get Potter in, Potter goes, they get De Zerbi in, De Zerbi goes, they get Hotspur in now. Player-wise, Caicedo's in, he's gone. Cucurella's in, he's gone. Trossard was in, he's gone. Others have all gone for huge money. And the club find the next group of players, find the way forward, and continue to move forward. I just felt
Bournemouth's similar.
Yeah, Bournemouth is very much a similar model. We're seeing this in Brentford. Again, would be another great example with Keith Andrews going into that football club. So it's interesting that Steve Parish and the board have come out and said that at this stage they're keeping Glasner in charge, which might be a bit of a gamble. You know, what's he going to do in this next 6 months between now and the end of the season? There's talk Mateta may want out. Wharton, I'm sure, is going to sit there and think this ain't maybe the place for me if this is what's happening. Obviously, we know Glasner's going to leave at the end of the season. Do you see him buckling down and getting on the job, or do you think, like many, that eventually this is going to blow up?
I think as an individually, I think Glasner will be looking at it and thinking, how does it affect his
standing?
Where
like
he is?
with,
yes.
Yeah.
How does it affect his standards in terms of going forward? But what I would say to him, and it's like, and I know Crystal Palace fans don't want to hear it, they want to be able to go out and buy good players and keep those best players. Yeah. But if you're Glasner, so let's put it this way, Crystal Palace took a chance on Glasner. They brought Glasner in, he's done really well. Is his stock higher now than when he joined Crystal Palace?
Absolutely. By a million miles.
So therefore, what you have to do, he has to look at it and go, oh, what they do with players, they potentially do with managers as well. He has to accept that, like, regardless of how much he is not happy about things, that's the way the club is run.
Yeah.
And as a coach, you go there and go, right, you know what? If I do really well here, I can move on. That's what the players do as well. And that isn't being disrespectful to Crystal Palace, but look at some of the great young talents that Crystal Palace have either brought through or have bought in for decent money, because those young players, their parents will be turning around and saying, listen, you go Crystal Palace. Yeah. Look at the examples of all these players. Yeah. You can go there, you can earn good money, but you know what? You're going to get a move to a Champions League team. And if you want to be a club that's run like that, everybody has to be on board. And I think Glasner will have been on board at first, but I hope that was just a little bit of frustration from him. Saying,
seems like he's gone a bit rogue, and I don't know. He's been a bit bitter. Obviously, the defeat to Macclesfield didn't help, losing to a non-league team when you're holders. But we'll see how that one plays out. I think there's plenty more to come in that Glasner and Crystal Palace. And the only thing I would say, just in closing, such a shame for those great days that this football club have had in recent years, and that FA Cup final will never be taken away, and people will forever remember their history. But just tainted, I think, a little bit by what we're seeing right now. Okay, mate, just time to run through a quick few of the remaining results. Everton 1, Aston Villa 0. Tieno Barry getting a goal again after some not great defending from Aston Villa's point of view, but Everton had a system, a way of play, done a great job, got the job done. Chelsea 2, Brentford 0. Liam Rosenior, his first Premier League manager as a Chelsea manager, gets the win. Pedro and Cole Palmer with the penalty there. I'll come back to that one just in a minute. Liverpool 1, Burnley 1. Another draw for Liverpool. Wirtz getting back to something like the form while you pay that kind of money, but Mox Edwards with a lovely goal to return. And then Leeds 1, Fulham 0. Mecha coming on and having an effect for a Leeds team who look like they're starting to get things right with Daniel Farke. Just take you back to Liam Rosenior, mate, because he's played in the FA in the League Cup. Lost 3-2 to Arsenal. Obviously, he was watching, I think, the FA Cup game. He's now got his first win as a Premier League manager. What have you made of him? What do you think's to come? What's the challenges?
I like Liam. I worked with him for a couple of years when I was back in England doing the broadcasting side of things. He's getting criticism already about some of the things that he says, but that's going to happen. But to be fair to him, I think I heard a press conference maybe this morning that he'd spoken about, where he's talking about the Lego and everything himself. That's his way of doing things. He's a very thorough individual, very, very intelligent individual. Yeah. You spend 15 minutes with him, you know exactly what he wants to do. So I like the way that he's playing. I think he's giving freedom to the players that are attacking. They still scare the life out of me defensively, because that 2-0 result, I think, flattered Chelsea.
I think there's rumours that they're looking to bring a centre back in, isn't it?
I saw that. From France, maybe?
Yeah, for France somewhere, there's a centre back being named. And possibly a centre forward, attacking midfield player. So we'll see what goes there. But so you think he's big enough and he'll take this on, and it's not going to affect him? That some are criticising the way he does things. It's a little bit cringy, some of the things he's saying, a bit David Brent.
I mean, I don't think, knowing him as I do know him for the time that I worked him, he has beliefs, and how he sees the game is how he sees the game. And if people don't accept it, people don't like it.
Yeah,
he's not bothered. And you need that to be a manager. You can't be swayed.
Yeah,
because when managers start getting swayed by fans, by pundits, by their players, you're in big trouble.
Yeah,
you've got to sort of go about how you go things. So he's a young man, so he'll be his own man. He'll continue to be that way. And you know what? It's been a good start for him. But like I say, defensively, they just need to get a whole lot more organised.
Well, we wish him well. And actually, we're Musty and I getting the chance to sit down with him on next Friday in our 15 minutes.
Tell him I said hello.
Yeah, we will do, and we'll get into him and see what he's got to say and where he sees things moving on for Chelsea. Right, mate, that's it for this weekend. On a weekend when none of the top three won, it was all eyes on Michael Carrick at Old Trafford, and he and his team, they didn't disappoint in a most convincing derby win against the noisy neighbours. We'll be back next Sunday, that's January the 25th, to look back at the big one, Arsenal hosting Manchester United at the Emirates. And don't forget, tomorrow Brighton take on Bournemouth. Danny will be on that show with Cora and Tim, I think it is, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on USA, so make sure you're viewing on that one. But for now, I'm Earle, he's Danny. Together we're kind of the two Robbies. Thanks for watching, listening. Be safe, stay healthy. It's a good night from me. It's a good night from him. Good night.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host of NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. And for even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock.